Welcome back to Royals Weekly. I am your host, Marcus Mead, and joining me as always, Mr. Rogers with less sex appeal, my brother Mike.
I cannot argue with that. Okay. Fred Rogers is not only an American icon, he could get it. That guy could. He pulled. Okay. That's all I'm saying. He pulled.
Wild to think.
Fred.
Wild to think. It was the 70s. It was a different time.
That guy, so many behind the scenes things that guy did that were awesome human being things. It's like, there's some people you'll never live up to. Dolly Parton, Fred
And
Rogers.
Mr. Rogers.
Those people they're in the pantheon. The Mount Rushmore of human beings includes those two.
All right. Anyway, on this week's episode, we're going to look back at the wild card series that the Royals won against Baltimore for a little bit, and then talk about the first game of that divisional series against the Yankees that they did not win. And we'll talk a little bit about that for those of you who are sad from last night's game. Or was that last night? Yeah, that was last night's game. We'll take a deep dive into the divisional series and talk a little bit more about what the Royals can do to get back into the divisional series and to hopefully win it. And then we'll preview the next few games of the divisional series. There's only one thing to talk about right now, guys. It's really just this Yankee series. Don't know if we'll be playing beyond that. Don't know if we won't be. We could be either way, but there's really nothing to preview too much. So we're just going to talk a ton about the divisional series in this episode. We do want to remind you to subscribe to the Royals Weekly Substack. We're putting out weekly, midweek episodes. I put out an article on Waka up against the Yankees lineup right before the first game of that series. I put out another thing today. You're getting extra articles. You're getting extra midweek episodes of Royals Weekly. So make sure you're subscribed to that. That's royalsweekly.substack.com. royalsweekly.substack.com. $5 a month gets you so much more content, and that'll include in the off season some too. So make sure you're subscribed there. We also want to remind you that Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get on their $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200K. When the game's over, head on over to their online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of their 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. Normally, we start the review of last week with roster news, but there's really no roster news to talk about per se. I mean, we could talk about how the roster that got chosen for the playoffs, but there really weren't a ton of surprises in there either. The Royals went ahead and went with only 11 pitchers, but they were 11 guys you would have expected to make it. And they went with, 15 position players, but they were 15 position players you would expect to make it, with Vinny Pasquantino being added back to the roster and all that sort of stuff. So not too much to talk about roster news wise. We'll just start digging into a review of last week. Mike, what are your thoughts? Actually, I am going to ask you one roster question, Mike. The Royals got Vinny Pasquantino back, surprisingly, before this playoff run. What are your thoughts on getting him back and on what he's been able to do so far?
Well, my thoughts on getting him back are very good. It's a weird situation because I don't know how a broken thumb affects your ability to drive the ball. I also don't know the extent to which his thumb is healed. I don't know. I know that ideally, I know if it was the regular season, Vinny Pasquantino would not be in there because they wouldn't have him have all that padding and all that stuff he's not used to when he's swinging. He wouldn't be doing that. They'd be, he'd be playing first, things like that. So I know he's not 100%, but I'm still not sure that you don't have to have him in the lineup. One of the real advantages of having Vinny Pasquantino this season was the situational offensive production, the sac flies, the hitting the ball the other way to score runs or doing whatever it takes really to score runs and run scoring position. So I think you have to have him in the lineup, but I do question his ability to really drive the baseball with a thumb that probably still needs time to heal. And unfortunately, time is not the luxury that we have right now. The good news is he's not going to do any more damage to it because a broken thumb is a broken thumb. Yeah, all it takes is time to heal and rest. And so, yeah, it makes sense to put him out there to me, even if he's not at 100%.
Right. And you remember he's coming off of another injury where you sort of wonder, coming into the season, he's coming off another injury where you sort of wonder what kind of impact it would have on his power production. And he wasn't hitting the ball all that hard this season before the thumb injury even. And so you have to question, okay, can he still hit the ball super hard with, 80% of a thumb, that sort of thing? The stories coming out of his live batting practices were that he was putting balls out of the yard and that he was hitting balls to the upper deck. And here's like a little behind the scenes baseball kind of thing. If you're facing live BP, it's roughly the same as facing a pitcher in terms of your ability to produce hard contact. And so that probably gave them a little bit of a cause to say, hey, maybe he can play and still produce at least some power. He's not squaring the ball up right now, and he's not creating the power outcomes that we would like. But there are so many other things that Vinny Pasquantino brings to offensive production. He takes really good plate appearances. He can grab a walk here and there. Like, there are things he can do around the edges that are probably better than the alternative of, say, having Freddie Vermeer in the lineup or something like that, right? And so, yeah, it makes sense that they want him back, and that if he might be doing it with a little. Maybe he's 85% of what he would be, but it's still probably better than the alternative for the Royals, or at least they've calculated that it's better than the alternative at this point. On the field last week, the Royals went 2-0 against the Orioles to beat them, swept them in the best of 3 wildcard series against the Orioles, and then lost the opening game to the Yankees yesterday, that's Saturday, in what was kind of a wild back and forth affair. A lot of questionable calls from in umpiring that people I'm sure will want to talk about. Mike, what are your thoughts? Let's start with the Orioles series, though. What are your thoughts on how the Royals played in that Orioles series?
It was awesome. It was just absolutely awesome to win a playoff series after a 106 loss season. And boy, does Kansas City love beating the shit out of Baltimore teams in the playoffs. I love it. The narrative was, oh, your football team can't beat us in the playoffs. Your baseball team can't beat us in the playoffs. Kansas City owns Baltimore. So I saw somebody put out there, hey, Kansas City, we're going to start making crab cakes better than Baltimore does too very soon. Like, why not? We already do everything else better than you. Let's make an HBO series called Union Station that's better than The Wire. Why don't we? Okay.
I've actually started writing that. Okay, so I'll tell you about this. I'll tell you about this off screen, but I've actually started writing that series. HBO, contact me if you need some content, because I got a brilliant idea brewing right up here.
And it's exactly how you kind of felt we would have to win a series like that, with unbelievable pitching and just enough offensive production. And that's what we got. We scored 3 runs in those 2 games and won both of them. 3 runs combined in those 2 games, won both of them, behind 2 phenomenal pitching performances and a bullpen that was just next level good. Didn't see that same exact bullpen in the first Yankees game, although the pitching was okay. They just couldn't throw strikes. And so in a tight zone, they couldn't throw strikes. And so, yeah, it was great to see them get that series sweep in Baltimore. I think it gave them a little confidence boost going into that first Yankees game.
Yeah, it was great. It was amazing to see. And it was amazing to see the Royals pitching staff keep that offense completely under control for both games. Because Baltimore's offense is really good. Say what you will about other aspects of that team. They came in with one of the best offenses in baseball, and the Royals pitching staff just shut them down for 2 straight games. The bullpen, 7+ innings scoreless over those 2 games. Cole Reagans came out and just threw 6 shutout innings in game 1. Lugo was good enough. I think he only ended up going like 4 1/3 or something like that, because he got into a jam with bases loaded. But, guys like Zerpa came out and did well. And
Schreiber looked great in that
Schreiber
second game.
And Bubich and Long, they all just took care of business out of that bullpen. We haven't even seen Brady Singer throw out of the bullpen yet. We haven't seen Daniel Lynch throw out of the bullpen yet, because other guys have just been taking care of business up to this point. And so it's been great to see. The lack of offense is a little bit concerning to me, right, from that Orioles series, because the Orioles pitching staff is nothing special. Like, they're not great in the bullpen. They're okay in the starting rotation, maybe even pretty good, especially with Burns going in that first game. But they're not even as good as the Royals in the rotation. And so you wonder about, like, oh man, this offense has got to get going. They have got to score runs in order to keep up with some of these other teams. They're going to have to score some runs in this Yankee series, because the Yankees are a good offense. They're not going to be able to ride their way all the way through the playoffs, winning 2-1 games, winning 1-0 games. And so Hopefully they can find it offensively a little bit. I thought they were doing pretty well against Garrett Cole last night, but still not quite as good as they should have been. And so we need to talk a little bit about that. We'll get to that here in a second. Let's talk about it, Mike. We're right there anyway. What about that opening game of the Yankee series? How did you feel about how the Royals played there?
Well, people are going to talk about the bogus call at second, which they should, okay? Because
absolute hot garbage.
Chisholm should not have been on second when he scored that go-ahead run.
Nope.
He was out. That inning should have been over by then. And yeah, ridiculous. And I saw somebody put out there, and it was not a Kansas City beat writer or anybody who's affiliated with Kansas City that I know of, but he put out there and said he was pitching an article that he basically wrote around the idea of, had the Yankees gotten screwed on that call, it's all we would be hearing about today. The Royals get screwed on it, and you don't hear a word about it. Nobody's talking about the fact that that game swung on a blown call at second that, to their credit, the play-by-play and color guys said that's the wrong call. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it hurts. I tell you that. But the Royals didn't put themselves in position to be talked about like that or to help themselves either with the walks that they issued in the bullpen. And I'm going to say it. They did not do what they should have done against Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole was terrible in that game.
He was pretty bad.
He left a ton of balls over the heart of the plate, and we did very little with those. And, when you don't take advantage of the opportunities that you have and you make mistakes, nobody's going to go boo-hoo for you when they screw up a call or when they call a ball when it's completely inside the strike zone. So we've got to take advantage of those things. We can't let the umpires be the thing that decides a game.
Yeah, that's 100% true there. I mean, if you watch that game yesterday, you know that if the Royals offense is in the groove, that's an 8-2 game. That's a 6-2 game.
They put up 6 runs in those first 2 innings if they're in the groove.
If they're actually producing the way that they should, the Royals score way more than 5 runs yesterday, right? Maybe it's an 8-6 game, or maybe it's a 9-6 game or something like that, because Garrett Cole wasn't good. He was leaving a lot of balls over the heart of the plate. The Royals were getting good swings to some degree, but they were just fouling them off, instead of really taking advantage of those mistake pitches from Garrett Cole. So a few things had to happen there, right? 1, the offense didn't produce the way it should have. 2, the Yankees got real lucky on some outcomes, right? Because if you go look at the expected batting averages for both teams, the Royals' expected batting average way higher than the Yankees yesterday. That's even expected, which means the Royals were putting some hard hit balls in play. If you remember the first inning, the Royals put 3 balls in play, all of them over 102 miles an hour. They got 3 outs, right? And it was one of those things, and none of them were pounded in the ground. They were all fly balls. And so it's one of those things that's like, okay, they did the stuff that normally gets you pretty good outcomes, but they were just unlucky there. They were also unlucky with, obviously, the umpiring was the biggest play of the game, turned on a very bad call at second. They also were cost a run by some bad ball strike calls and things like that. And so a lot of things went against the Royals, including just luck and things like that, but they were right in the game. They looked good. If they can continue to grow some confidence offensively, if Bobby Witt Jr. and some of these other middle of the lineup guys can get onto it, things might turn around for us, because they looked pretty good yesterday, except for some of the sloppy things that they need to clean up.
One thing I think you come away from that game thinking, this team is not greatly better than the Royals. I mean, this should be a competitive series. I'm not sure they're better than the Royals, period.
I'm not sure they are either.
And so, yeah, I really think that game, you come away from that game thinking, hey, this is a series that we can win, coming away with some confidence still. But it just sucks to start it that way when you felt like you did some other things. The other thing I wanted to talk about with that was, I'm getting a lot of people on threads, they pulled Waka too early. Maybe I could see some criticism against that, because I think Waka probably was doing well and was giving you some really good pitches and some ability to get out of situations. But I think that might have also hinged on their timeline for starting pitching and when they want him to pitch again. And so if they're going to have him pitch like on 4 days rest, they're not going to have him go through a lineup a third time. And the plan before the game was probably, as soon as he's in the 5th or later and gets a guy on, we're taking him out so that we can pitch him again on 4 days rest or whatever, and he'll be okay in this Yankee series again when we need him. So I'm not going to crush them for taking Waka out of there and going to a bullpen that has been very strong recently.
Yeah, I have no quibbles at all with any of the decisions that Matt Quatraro make. I have a quibble with the decision that Vance Wilson made, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about that here in a second. Mike, who is your strong performer for this last week?
Oh man, a guy who has been so effing good in this end of this, really since we got him, but especially in the playoffs. Lucas Erceg, the Duke. We've decided the Duke, Lucas Erceg, 3.2 innings pitched, 0 hits. He hadn't given up a hit yet in the playoffs. No runs, 2 walks, and 6 strikeouts. He has been the rock of the bullpen that you needed him to be going into it. And you know, the old, he's brought stability to the bullpen. It's an understatement at this point. You know, he's brought confidence. He's brought the strikeout ability. He's brought everything you needed him to bring. He has brought it to the bullpen. And I know it's because of other guys stepping up as well, Bubich and Long and Zerpa and stuff. But Lucas Erceg is the anchor of that bullpen. And boy, am I glad to have one.
Yeah, I just can't hear that phrase. Bring some stability to the bullpen.
Peter Gammons.
Peter Gammons. Yeah.
Peter Gammons.
Yeah, really bring some stability to the bullpen. Yeah, that's great.
You're right, Peter Gammons, legend.
Yeah, my strong performer for this week is Michael Massey. He has been, when Bobby Witt Jr. and Salvador Perez and Vinny Pasquantino haven't really been producing for the Royals in the middle of the lineup, Michael Massey has done some stuff at the top of the lineup that has really helped them generate a few runs here and there. And that's been really important for them. We asked the question, who would step up, who isn't one of those main 3 hitters. Michael Massey has done a good job stepping up this week. He went 5 for 13 with 1 double this week. He's leading off, not walking at all still, which is very atypical of a leadoff hitter, but he's doing everything that he can to set the table for Bobby Witt Jr., Salvador Perez, and Vinny Pasquantino. Hopefully, he can keep doing that and until they get back to hitting and doing the things they need to do as a heart of a lineup. He's also made quite a few really good defensive plays at second base. You might remember the diving stop he made in the Baltimore series to save a run, essentially. Got a very important out late in the game on a great diving stop. And so Massey's been doing it kind of all around, and that's been really a wonderful thing to see. Mike, it hasn't been sunshine and rainbows for everybody. Tell us about the weak performers this week.
Well, I'm putting Bobby in there. Bobby Witt Jr., 3 for 14, 0 extra base hits. He has 2 very important and big RBI in the Baltimore series. They were crucial when you only score 3 runs, but 0 walks and 2 strikeouts. We need Bobby to produce off power production offensively, and he needs to pull the ball to do that. And it's just not happening consistently enough. You know, he will always be able to keep a relevant a good batting average and scrap across runs. The 2 runs that he got, at least one of the runs he knocked in the Baltimore series was on an infield hit. That was I think the game-winning run in game 2. And he'll always be able to have those because of the speed. But we need him to hit the ball over the fence and in the gaps for doubles and triples because, you know, some of those guys are doing an okay job being on base in front of him. We just aren't getting big innings from that. And we need Bobby in a bad way. I mean, we need Salvi in a bad way. But Bobby's the superstar, and we need him to be one in this series.
Yeah, that 0 walks kind of says a lot to me about Bobby Witt Jr. in this week, which is that he has not had the patience necessary to take those walks. The pitchers in these lineups will pitch around him.
Probably should have earned one yesterday.
Well, no, I don't know. That last at bat,
it was a borderline call, maybe a little below the zone.
Too close to take for sure.
The zone had been a lot tighter than that all day when he took that pitch.
Yeah, that's true. But at the same time, there are too many plate appearances where he gets way over aggressive and ends up putting a ball in play that he never should have swung at based on the count and where that pitch was. Happened yesterday. I want to say, happened yesterday in like the 5th or 6th. He's up with the bases loaded, 2 out, and he has a chance to drive in some runs. He gets a pitch way inside on the first one, almost hits him. He gets out of the way. It's 1-0. He gets a really good sinker down in the bottom third of the zone on pitch 2. What does he do? Swings at it, harmless ground ball. And it's like, that's not the pitch you want when you're up 1-0. Just be patient. Like, wait for the pitch that you can truly drive because that wasn't it. And you just did exactly what he wanted you to do. And so there's some plate appearance and some approach issues that need to be adjusted there for Bobby Witt Jr. I'm talking about Vinny Pasquantino as my weak performer. It's tough because they need him to be really good, but he's also still hurt clearly and still healing and that sort of thing. He went 2 for 12 this week, 0 extra base hits, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts. He's their 3-hitter. You need your 3-hitter to produce power outcomes. He's not producing them right now, and he will be a key to the rest of this series. If he can produce offensively, that's a huge bonus for them. That's a huge plus for them, right? And so right now, oddly, it looks like guys like at the bottom of the lineup and then Massey a little bit at the top of the lineup are doing what they need to be doing. We saw Melendez get a couple hits yesterday, had a home run. Garcia got a hit yesterday. Isbell got on base, I think, at least once. Hampson pinch hit for him and got a hit in a key spot yesterday. Guys in the other spots in the lineup are doing it. The 2, 3, and 4 hitter right now it's fucking crickets from them right now. And so we need somebody in those 3 to step up. Mike, we're talking all doom and gloom because of the Yankee series, but it's been a pretty good week for the Royals. They won a playoff series this week. What is your theme for this week?
Well, I go back to a movie that I have now used for my theme several times. I don't think I've ever used this one, although I may have. I mean, we've done so many of these episodes now, I can't remember all of them. But I go to Shawshank Redemption, the classic Stephen King, I think short story, wasn't it? I think it was a short story that they turned.
It was a short story, I'm pretty sure.
Where Andy Dufresne has written basically a parting letter to Red and says to him like, hey, this is the signal that I'm going to be gone. You know where I'm going. But he gives him one line there at the end where he says, remember, Red, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies, right? This is a good thing. The hope that we still have to win a series, the fact that the Royals already won a playoff series, we've got a lot of hope in that we can beat the Yankees. We've seen it. We've been there. We just have to close the door. We just have to capitalize early in games. We have to not make mistakes. And I think this team can beat the New York Yankees and move on to the ALCS. And if they do, think of that party, baby. It's going to be great.
Can't wait.
The 2024 Kansas City Royals beat the Evil Empire, the number 4 team in payroll, to move on to the ALCS. That's such a fantastic storyline. I am ready to have it, and I have hope.
I love it. I love hope. I'm talking a movie. I've probably quoted this movie too, though not this line. I'm going to the classic Bob film, the classic Keanu Reeves vehicle, The Matrix. The first one for this line. You remember Neo is just about to touch the mirror and enter or leave the Matrix. Actually, Morpheus turns to him and says, "Have you ever had a dream, Neo, that you were so sure was real?
Yeah.
What if you were unable to wake from that dream? How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world?" That's
great Lawrence Fishburne.
That's my Lawrence Fishburne.
Great Fishburne.
So yeah, that's because all of this is kind of a dream to me, right? Like nobody expected the Royals to be here. Nobody expected them to win a playoff series. Nobody expected them to be even close to the playoffs. I'm just like living in that dream right now, and I can't tell the difference between the dream world and the real world. But I don't really care, and I don't really want to tell the difference. I'm more like Cypher. I don't care. Like
you're the dude who's like, plug me back in.
Plug me back in. If this is the dream, plug me back in. Royals Weekly is brought to you by All in Physical Therapy. You already know that All in Physical Therapy gave our mother superhuman deltoids. Mike, point to your deltoids for the audience.
They're here somewhere.
Yeah, you're right around there. But what you don't know is that Mom loved her experience there because of the personal attention she got from Tommy and the staff at All In. They guarantee a personalized one-on-one experience to suit the needs of patients recovering from total joint surgeries, sports injuries, or any kind of injury or pain.
I wonder if they fix broken eyesight, because I know a couple umpires. I'm just saying. I'm just saying here. People are saying the umpires in Major League Baseball are garbage.
All in Physical Therapy is owned and operated by Tommy Freevert with locations in Blue Springs, Lee Summit, and Belton. But more importantly, they're in network for nearly all insurance providers.
I'm pretty sure Umpires Union has pretty good benefits, so they should be fine. They're going to be in network. Fix those peepers.
If you're a high school athlete recovering from injury or someone bouncing back with a brand new hip or knee, check out the best physical therapy in the KC Metro at allin-pt.com. That's ALLIN-pt.com, or give them a call at 816-427-5300. That's 816-427-5300. The opening game of the ALDS was a wild back and forth affair. Ultimately, the Royals lost 6-5 thanks to one extremely questionable replay, some poor ball and strike calls, and a few crucial mistakes. But we're not going to talk about the umpiring. Losers whine about the officiating. Winners talk about what they can do better. So, Mike, what do the Royals need to do better to come back in the ALDS?
Well, I think the first thing is the obvious one of no free passes. We can't have a bullpen that gives up that many walks. And I mean, we don't want it was 8 total. We don't want the starters giving up walks either, and they would give them up just in crucial spots. You're walking the guy in front of Juan Soto. Huge mistake.
Here's a fun fact. Juan Soto and Aaron Judge both had 1 combined walk in that game. Yeah. The 3 guys in front of Juan Soto had 3 walks combined in that game. That's the 9-hitter and the 8-hitter, the 9-hitter, and the 1-hitter combined for 3 walks.
Yeah, can't not do that in front of a player like Juan Soto. So that's the very obvious one. And the other one is the one that we kind of talked about earlier. You have to cash in if that starting pitcher is struggling, which we kind of saw it coming from Garrett Cole. It had been a long time since he pitched. It had been a long time since the Yankees played. You want to be able to capitalize on pitches left in the heart of the zone, and our offense is not doing that. So we have to jump on those guys when we have opportunities, and that's how you create big innings, is by doing that sort of stuff early in the game. So I would love to see that. No more free passes, I think, is the biggest one because this team can scrap across runs, but give me a big inning in the early innings when a guy's making mistakes.
Yeah, I think that will be a crucial key, especially in game 2 when they're facing Rodon, who also hasn't pitched in a long time at this point. And the Royals have seen him many times, twice this year and many times previous to that. And so it'll be interesting to see what Rodon looks like coming out on how many days rest do you think he has? Like 10, or something like that. He hasn't pitched in a very long time. And so take advantage of those mistakes that are left in the heart of the plate. I mean, it's not just hitting with runners in scoring position, although that was an issue yesterday as well. It's also when a guy leaves you a pitch in the heart of the plate, you need to be putting it in the gap or over the wall. Like you are Salvador Perez, you are Bobby Witt Jr., you are Vinny Pasquantino, you are MJ Melendez. You are guys with a lot of power in this game. You should be putting, especially at Yankee Stadium, a place where literally someone can probably throw one out from home plate to right field. Like we could probably find one of our listeners who could do it. Mike and I don't have real strong arms and never have, but one of our listeners, Alex is a routine listener. I would not be shocked if Alex could throw one from home plate over right field. Right. And so it's one of the things, like it's very short porch there, right? Like people talk about, left field is bigger, so don't hit it left. But guess what? Left field isn't any bigger than Kaufman is. You can, they should be putting balls out or into the gaps. Like it's just a thing that needs to happen, especially when the pitches that they're leaving you to hit are prime premium hitters pitches.
They're breaking balls just sitting there.
Cement mixers sitting in the middle of home plate. Just hit them out. Like pull them out of the yard, right? Like it's what good offenses do, but it's also even what average offenses do. You should be putting some of those balls out. Mike, the 2, 3, and 4 spots in the lineup were a combined 1 for 14 in yesterday's game with 0 walks and 0 extra base hits. What do these 3, that is Vinny Pasquantino, Bobby Witt Jr., and Salvador Perez, need to do to get things going?
Well, that's a great question because I think that's going to be what hinges on them winning this ALDS or not. I think we've talked about how Bobby has to pull the ball, and it's not any surprise. Pull the ball and lift the ball, and Bobby Witt Jr. is going to be a monster. And I think there's some validity to this. After that home run derby, where what is he doing to hit home runs? Pulling the ball and lifting the ball. He comes in and he has the best stretch of the season for him. And it was largely because he was hitting the ball over this fence to left center field and left field. He has got to get back to that. He has got to get back to pulling the ball consistently. Now, if he wants to be the kind of guy that hits the ball to right field, situationally, that's great for Bobby Witt Jr. I am
when you have 2 strikes, fine.
Yes, 2 strikes and you need to protect. Good. Shoot you one between second base and first base. And then start legging it out. That's fantastic. But you have the power to pull and lift the ball out of the ballpark and do a whole lot of damage doing that. He's got to start doing it again. because and I think you're right. I think a lot of that hinges on what pitches are you swinging at for him and things like that. But it's got to be a concerted effort for him. And then who Salvador Perez is. We just need him to get onto one of those heaters. And he's played a ton. He needs to take this day off and refocus and say, hey, I'm going to be the best version of myself that doesn't swing at those pitches down and out of the zone and down and away and out of the zone so that I can be as productive as I can offensively. Because I don't think part of me worries a little bit that Vinny is not going to have the ability to do that. I know that what they talked about in the live BP and all that sort of stuff. Okay. But I have yet to see him, and it's going to take a time. I mean, he didn't hit for how long? The timing itself is going to be enough to probably keep him from producing a whole lot of power. So I'm really counting on Vinny to be more of a situational kind of guy. Salvi and Bobby, though, have got to drive the ball to the gap or over the fence.
Yeah, it really all comes back to approach for those two. It's all about, are you forcing the pitcher to throw you pitches that you can do damage on? Are you laying off balls outside the strike zone? Are you laying off pitchers' pitches when you're ahead in the count? There is a way to do this. And at this point, so many pitchers know that they don't need to be, that they can expand the zone on Bobby Witt Jr. and Salvador Perez, that they're going to. Like, they're not going to throw you a ton of quality pitches to hit Bobby Witt Jr. early in counts. Why would they? You'll swing at anything. So why would they throw you quality pitches to hit early in counts? When you get ahead early in a count,
they're not worried about walking him either.
They're not. And they're not
why
worried
would
about walking you. So take your walk then and let Vinny or Salvi do the damage. I think it'll be a little bit better facing Carlos Rodon because he's left-handed and Salvador Perez does. The big weakness for Salvador Perez is a slider running away from him. He cannot tell where it is relative to the plate. And so he swings at all of them. And so that'll be harder to do, throwing pitches. I mean, Rodon will try and do it with his improved changeup, but it's not the same thing. And so, Salvi will, I think, have a better time with Rodon. Obviously, Bobby's right-handed, Rodon's left-handed. That should help play to his advantage as well. I am curious to see if they actually start Vinny Pasquantino against Rodon, because Rodon's left-handed, because they went out and signed Grossman and Pham to play against left-handers. Will they do something there? They have Hunter Renfroe as well. They have other options for hitting in the heart of the lineup against left-handers that they specifically put in place on purpose. But either way, the heart of this lineup needs to sort of be a little bit more selective as they try and produce these power outcomes, because right now they're even getting into situations where they're 0-0 or 1-0 or 1-1 or something like that. A pitcher's pitch comes in and they're swinging at it and putting it in play, which is also bad because you get bad outcomes on that. It's a ground ball. It's a lazy fly ball. It's just a bad outcome because you shouldn't have swung at that pitch. Wait to see the next one. Maybe he makes a mistake with the next one, right? Like, that's why just giving yourself another pitch to see is often very valuable, because you're waiting for him to make a mistake. Mike, to me, I think we have to talk about how sloppy game one of that divisional series was. It felt very sloppy to me. There was bad base running plays, not great defense. People talk about the umpire's call at second base a lot, but nobody talks about the fact that
the throw was not good.
If Salvador Perez makes a halfway competent throw there, he's out by a mile. And so, there's a lot of defensive issues to talk about too. Do you think the Royals need to clean up their play for the rest of this ALDS?
I do, because you don't know what you're going to get from the offense. The offense is limited. And when offense is limited, those mistakes are magnified tremendously. And we talk about those Royals runs of 14 and 15 and, all they ever did was put the ball in play and expect and wait for the defense to make mistakes. No, they also played impeccable defense themselves and didn't make any mistakes late in games. That's why they won those games, and they let those other teams make mistakes. This team does not have even the offensive ability of those teams. Their lineups aren't nearly as deep. They don't have the production up and down. They may have a little bit more ability to hit for power, but they don't get into it enough, and they're not as consistent as those teams were. So you're not going to be able to cover up those mistakes with offensive production. You have to limit them. You have to play a better brand of baseball than what your opponent is playing. And, that Salvi getting thrown out at home. That's on Vance Wilson. You can't send him there. There's no outs. There were no outs.
Yeah, let's talk about that play because I was actually going to bring this up. Okay, so Vance Wilson, let's just reset the scene. It's the second inning, right? Who gets on first? I forget who gets on first. Oh, Salvador Perez. Salvador Perez gets on with a single. Mm-hmm. Behind him, Yuli Gurriel takes a walk, I think. And so it's first and second. Nobody out. MJ Melendez comes out, hits a pretty hard hit ball, like 100 miles an hour, to right field.
Right field. Now, the right fielder stays in front of it. It makes a move, but it's not to the wall or anything.
To the wall. It's not by him. He doesn't have to go laterally that much. Okay. Juan Soto is the right fielder. Juan Soto has a league average arm for strength, but a very accurate throwing arm. He's actually +3 in runs value for his arm, right? Because he's got an accurate throwing arm. And so Salvador Perez is rounding third. Vance Wilson decides to send him home. Now, when you make decisions like this as a third base coach, you have to take a whole bunch of conditions into account. Okay. What time is it in the game? How has my offense looked against this pitcher? Who's throwing in right field? Who's running? How many outs are there? All that sort of stuff. The most basic consensus wisdom in this situation is do not make the first or last out at home, right? Like you don't want to make the first out at home, especially, right? Like, and so they could have held him for that reason, but add on to that the fact that you have Salvador Perez is one of the slowest runners in the league. Juan Soto has a pretty good arm in right field. The ball was hit pretty hard. And you have just a series of circumstances that say, do not send that runner, right? Because we're about to have bases loaded, nobody out, right? Like that's exactly what you want, right? Like, and so they send him. And I hear some people being like, oh, well, if he hadn't sent him, Salvi wouldn't have scored on the fly ball that Pham then hit, and so on and so forth. First off, he would have, because the throw from Judge in on that fly ball was garbage, because Judge doesn't have a very accurate throwing arm. And so Gurriel was safe by a mile on that. And so, yes, Salvador Perez probably would have made it on the sac fly. But even then, you're out back. You have another out where somebody could get a hit and score 2 or 3 runs in that inning. Right? Like you cannot send it. It was bad process to send him, and it led to a bad outcome. But no matter what, that decision should not have been made.
Well, and here's what you have to do if you're Vance Wilson. Before anybody throws a pitch, before Cole ever throws a pitch to MJ Melendez, he's running through that stuff in his mind. Okay, as soon as you say my runner on second base is Salvador Perez, you go, he's only getting sent in the most pristine situation. I mean, ball hits wall. Ball hits wall, he goes home. Other than that, I'm not sending him unless the guy kicks it or something.
Because you're also talking about this is the second inning and your offense is all over Garrett Cole.
Exactly.
Okay? This is the second inning. Like you should be playing for a big inning at this moment. Right?
Exactly. Like, and the fact that you have to set something in your mind as a third base coach that says, my default for this situation, nobody out, Salvador Perez on second, all the things that you mentioned, is no, we're not sending him. Okay. Mm-hmm. We're not sending this guy unless something drastic happens. Ball down the line, hits the wall, something like that. Or
right fielder kicks it, something like that.
Guy falls down, going to get the ball, something like that. Other than that, we're staying here because, like you said, guy hits a single in that next one, you get, or a single or a double or something, multiple runs. You're having a multiple run inning in those situations. And yeah, Vance Wilson, it must have been a tough night of sleep last night for you, I'm sure.
Yeah. I do want to throw out one little silver lining for this, and that's that the Yankees grabbed a 1-run win with their ace on the mound and the Royals number 3 on the mound. And so now we get Cole Reagans on the mound against Rodon, and then we'll get Lugo against someone. I don't know who's coming out in that third game for the Yankees. But that was the game where they were going to have the favorable pitching matchup maybe, and we still probably should have won that game. So hopefully that bodes well for how things turn out in the future. Royals Weekly is brought to you by Eric Oxer of West USA Realty. Phoenix has all of our favorite things: year-round golf, year-round baseball, and Eric Oxer of West USA Realty. Whether you want to buy your dream retirement home or just stay a while and catch spring training, Eric can help you find the perfect house. We've known him for 30 years and trust him far more than we even trust each other.
Mark once tried to convince me that I'd been adopted, but he hadn't.
Yeah, It worked for a week. Eric does long-term rentals and for the snowbird crowd and home sales and purchases for those who want to stay a while longer. Are you a baseball player or parent who needs a place in the Phoenix area? Eric will find you the perfect spot fast. You want to spend your days shanking golf balls into the great beyond? Eric knows the golf scene like Mike knows the closing times of every fast food joint within 5-mile radius of his house. Find Eric online at ericoxer.com if you can figure out how to spell his name. ERICKAUXIER.com. Or just shoot him a text at 480-383-9745. That's 480-383-9745. Even if you're just curious about what he can do for you, he's 100% no pressure, one of the best people we know.
And he understands the human heart.
Not in a gross way, though. There's really one thing to look ahead to, and that's just the rest of this divisional series. The Royals face the Yankees for one more game in New York before flying home for a game 3 on Wednesday, which yeah, boy, we'll be going to. I'll be at that game on Wednesday.
Must be nice to be part of the old 1%ers. Your diamond shoes and your Rolls Royces.
I mean, I got lucky, and a friend of mine who I haven't talked to in like 5 years texted me and was like, hey, I'm coming down for the game. I got an extra ticket. You want to go? I'm like, first off, this friend is awesome. So if he's listening, Durs, shout out to you because you're awesome. But also, I was like, hell yeah, I want to go. And so we're going on Wednesday. It's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait. But Mike, tell us what's on deck for this Yankee series.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, we're going to go with Cole Reagans versus Carlos Rodon. I believe was he the number 1 pick or the number 2 pick of the year that he was drafted?
I don't remember.
Out of North Carolina State. He was either number 1 or number 2 overall. 31-year-old lefty out of North Carolina State, a 3.96 ERA with a 1.22 whip. He's still got a 4-seam fastball in the mid-90s, a slider, as Marc alluded to earlier, a newly minted changeup, curveball, cutter. The slider is a good pitch. He's got a 4.14 expected ERA. The changeup has been his best pitch this year, but you can still hit the fastball pretty well. We've seen him twice, and so I'll get into that a little bit more here in a second. But Carlos Rodon, a guy who's been through it, a veteran who knows what it's like to pitch in the postseason. He knows what it's like to face big-time lineups and big-time matchups.
Mike, do you like this matchup for the Royals?
I don't love it. Well, let me put it this way. I don't love going against Carlos Rodon. The Royals had a 672 OPS against lefties this year, which is like 24th, I think, in Major League Baseball.
That's not high.
Right. Yeah, it's not high. The first time they faced him twice, 13 innings combined, 3 earned runs against Carlos Rodon. And the right-handed power guys that you need, the Bobby Witt Juniors, the Salvador Perez's, the Hunter Renfroes, they haven't produced really lately. They haven't been very good recently. And we're going to need, if we put up a crooked number against Rodon, it'll be because one of those guys was able to break out and do something in this game, I feel like.
I'll bet you a decent amount of money that Tommy Pham is leading off in this game as well.
I could definitely see that for sure.
Because he is brought in to basically do well against left-handers, and that's what he's much better at. And I think you'll see MJ Melendez not playing in this game. I think you'll see Pham and Renfroe in the corners probably.
Well, and as much as Pham has played and been in the league, and Rodon as well, he's seen Rodon quite a bit. And so I don't know what the numbers are there, but at least you've got a guy who knows what's coming.
Yeah, and I will say that's one thing I like about this matchup is that the Royals have also seen him a bunch as well. They've seen him twice this year, but they've seen him. He was with the White Sox for a few years at least, and so they've seen him with the White Sox. They saw him last year with the Yankees at the end of the year. You'll remember they put an absolute pounding on Rodon in the last game of the season. I think they scored like 8 runs off him in the first inning. He had to be pulled. It was really, really bad. And so hopefully they harken back to the last game of last year and just start destroying him is what I would love to see. But we'll see on that one. Mike, how do you feel about Reagans against the Yankees lineup?
I like that one. I like that matchup pretty well. I like Reagans against anybody. I think he's the kind of guy at this point where you feel confident no matter who he's going against. But the Yankees also struggle against lefties a little bit more. Better than the Royals, generally speaking. Their lineup is against lefties, but it's definitely worse. They're the number 1 team in OPS against right-handed pitchers in Major League Baseball. So, but but I like Riggins against any team. I think it sets up well. I think he's going, if the changeup is good, like it has been, and he mixes very well. I think also one of the underrated aspects to how good he was in the Baltimore game and how good he was at the end of the season was how effective he's been able to mix in the cutter. When he mixes in the cutter into righties, it can be a very effective pitch. And it kind of, because he doesn't throw it a ton, it kind of throws people off. And so,
yeah, because you'll remember back when he was throwing the cutter a ton back with Texas, it was getting crushed.
It was not a good
pitch for him.
Yeah.
But it's worked out a lot better now that it's like moved down the list in terms of how often he uses it. It kind of sneaks up on people quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think at times he'll lose a little bit of a little handle on the slider. And so I think maybe just basically what you're doing with the cutters, you're throwing a slider a bit harder and with not as much rotation. And so I think that can sometimes be where he goes when he's losing the handle on the slider a little bit. And so I think he's going to set up really well. And I love that he's going to be in there. I really hope he can go deep and we can have a big inning early. That's my kind of key to winning that Yankees game.
Yeah, that'd be lovely. That's at least a key to winning it without me having to stress for 3 hours.
No kidding.
I like this matchup as well, mostly because of Juan Soto and Austin Wells. I think having a lefty in Riggins matches up better with Soto and Wells. And honestly, Wells, I think, just feels like Wells has killed the Royals all year. I don't know if you know, I haven't looked up the numbers exactly, but he did well. It feels like he's done well throughout this year against us. He's a lefty. Soto's a lefty. Maybe gives you a little bit better a shot against those two. Judge is not hitting very well right now. And yes, he's right-handed. And yes, I'm sure he does pretty well against lefties typically. But Riggins is not your typical lefty. He is, with that great changeup, typically able to face righties pretty well. And so we'll see if he can throw some fastballs up in the zone to Judge and keep that changeup down in the zone and hopefully overpower this Yankees lineup. We'll end this week's episode like we end every episode with our Just About Outside segment, where we talk about something that's interesting to us outside the world of baseball. Mike, I know what you're talking about, and it looks interesting. Give our audience a sense of the wisdom of this dirt road legends.
Well, my musical interests lie in, I guess some people would call it country Americana type stuff, but it started down that road with a band called Cross Canadian Ragweed, which had some bigger success in the early 2000s. And I actually caught on to them a little bit late. I didn't get into them until they were towards the end of their time together, but I was able to see a few live shows from them. They're out of Oklahoma and they play, you might even describe it somewhat as like Southern rock. It's very rock and roll, guitar heavy, type stuff, with decent songwriting over the top. And, you know, it was a staple of my college years. But the band broke up, and they had a pretty nasty breakup towards the end, and they all kind of went on to do other things. And then
you sleep with one bandmate's mother, I swear.
It's like, geez, that is not actually what happened.
That's not what happened.
But a buddy of ours, texted me the other day and said, "Hey, Ragweed's getting back together." I'm like, "What? No way." Because I know the story of the breakup, and I'm like, there's no way that's happening. And then the next day, he sends me a screenshot that says, "One night only, Stillwater, Oklahoma, Cross Canadian Ragweed is going to play with one of my other favorite bands of all time, the Turnpike Troubadours, another Oklahoma, you might call it red dirt country band, as well as with another few bands that I am big fans of, Jason Boland and the Stragglers, The Great Divide, and Stoney LaRue." And so that is like one of the concerts of all concerts. Now I've seen almost all of these people. I think with the exception of The Great Divide and Stoney LaRue, I've seen all of them play at different times in different places. But I would really, really, really like to go. And our buddy asked, "Hey, you want to go with me? We'll go together." But it's right in a bad time of the year. So I don't think I'm going to get to see it. I'm hoping maybe I can buy it like on Bandcamp, or maybe there's a live stream of it or something so that I can watch the show. But man, imagine one of the groups that changed your musical life coming back together for a show. And I'm excited to see it. Hopefully see it.
I hope you get a chance to see it in some form. That sounds really fun. Yeah, I am familiar with Ragweed's with catalog as well, and have seen them in live once. They're fun. They're fun. It's hard because I compare them to other acts that are, in my mind, far superior in some ways. But they're still good. They're still a really good act. They still have good songwriting and all that sort of stuff. I'm talking about a TV show that I watched. Actually, not this last week. I finished it probably just before this started this last week, but it's sticking in my brain this week because I keep thinking about it, and stuff keeps sort of referencing it in my mind, And it's a Netflix show called The Three Body Problem, and it's kind of a science fiction-y show. It's really good. You should definitely watch it, especially if you're into things like science fiction and discussions about like what it would happen if we could communicate with other beings and other places. And if you're just interested in the notion of like where technology might go in the future, it's just an interesting show. I highly recommend it. I couldn't tell you. I don't know that I could name one actor from it. I can tell you stuff they've been in. So the dude who plays Davos Seaworth in Game of Thrones, if you've ever watched Game of Thrones, he's in it, right? Like
No.
and,
I've seen a woman naked. So
okay. And the dude who plays Kang in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like he's like
again
Doctor Strange's sidekick, basically.
He is.
He's really good in it. There's just a bunch of really good actors. It's great writing, and it's really interesting to think about because it kind of exists across different worlds, but also throughout time. And so like basically something happens in the 1970s, communist China. One person makes one decision that ultimately changes the course of the future for humanity. And it's like a very sort of interesting way in which that ends up happening. And then it sort of flashes forward to 2024 and all this sort of stuff, and it's wild. It's a wild thing, and it's very interesting. And so if you have any interest in science fiction, if you're interested in any sort of thing like that, Netflix, The Three Body Problem, it's very, very, very good.
You are
That's all I have
a giant nerd.
I love science fiction and fantasy films and television. That is a thing for me. And so that's all we have for you this week. Thank you so much for joining us here on Royals Weekly, presented by Bet Online. We will be back again next week, hopefully, to preview the ALCS.
Oh God, that would be so awesome.
But we'll see. Until then, be good to each other.
And go Royals.